when it comes to public works, a lot of people are screwing up. When you mostly hear about public works, you hear about these like big buildings that are never finished. And this is the Royugyong, I need Aki to help me with this, a hotel in North Korea that was started in 1992. Rumor has it they finished it last year, but no one wants to be in North Korea right now, so no one's actually checked. But so there's this one, you've heard about it, you've got a context, it looks like a big dick. This one also looks like a big dick, you guys. This is my favorite one. It's called Skeletor. They call it Skeletor in Poland, and it's actually the tallest building in Krakow. They started building it in 1975, and they built it until 1978, and then they ran out of money, which is usually what happens to these projects, and they haven't done anything with it since, except now it's a giant billboard. My favorite thing is that it has actually been reviewed on Yelp, and no one's been inside of it. It's got 2.5 stars, and this woman says, there are worse goblins in the city. But I'm going to talk to you about projects that didn't just run out of money, because those are the ones where someone really fucked it up. Because money, I get it, but this guy right here, Rick Edmondson, welcome to Rick Edmondson's site dealing with unfinished buildings. He's really passionate, and you know what, he's not as complete as the Wikipedia entry on unfinished buildings, but in honor of all of his resources, I'm going to talk about his number one, Siena Cathedral. You can't really read it, but it says where it all started. We're going to talk about that first, and then we're going to go into a few projects that I really like. So the Siena Cathedral is really, really beautiful. It was built in the, I think around 1000. They actually crowned Pope Nicholas II there, elected. But it's not finished. You wouldn't think that because it's so gothic, so awesome. So 5-star from Yelp, you better stop by. But if you go there, there's actually a whole thing that's empty. Because they decided in 1339 that it was time to expand the church to about twice its size. And they got a lot of funding for it. People were like, yes, I love the church, I love the church. And then they were like, no, it's the Black Plague, we're bringing the Jews. And as you might remember from last month, the Black Plague killed about everyone in Europe? A third of Europe, there we go. So people were really, really distracted. And then by the time the plague was over, there was no one to fill the church. So they stopped, and now you can kind of see in the photo, I couldn't find it about. That's a parking lot. And it's actually on the floor of the church that they built. So it's a beautiful parking lot, probably the best parking lot you'll go to, which is surprising because Siena, Italy is actually mostly a parking lot, and you, I thought I had a parking ticket in there. A lot of the reviews on TripAdvisor about Siena, Italy are people who rented cars, but then they don't realize that you can't drive them into Siena because it's one of those places where they have those special permits for people who are only from that place, and you have to like get money, and then all these people get rental cars and then they get tickets. So they love the church, they hate the tickets. What they are lacking is a really good public transit system, and that is my next story for you. And I'm going to start with a little history of public transit because I find it absolutely fascinating. So you guys better too. So the first public transit was these private omnibuses, which is just a horse cart where a shit ton of people got on. And you had to pay for it! And it was really, really bumpy. So people didn't like it, so they actually started building horse carts into roads, and that's when cities started to get involved because they had to build roads so the horse carts would have a place for their wheels to go. And then there's a lot of options, because this is a really good joke. A horse walks into a bar, the bartender asks by the long face, a horse, incapable of understanding the human language, promptly shits on the floor and So, a lot of options, because we got rid of the horses, we're a lot happier now. There's elevated trains, there's cable cars with steam power where they're actually pulling the wheels using steam power like across the whole city. We've got motor buses, we've got trolleys using electrical wires, but this is a story of a subway. Not the New York subway, but I love the MTA. So in 1900, the subway construction begins in New York. First day, there's 100,000 riders in 1903, and by 1931, most of the MTA is built, and now there's goats on it. I've never seen one, but it would be awesome. And yes, it doesn't always work. cream last weekend. But we did a pretty good job, and now New York has 4.5 stars on Yelp. Yeah, the unfinished cathedral and New York are in competition for your tourism dollars. A city that didn't do so well was Cincinnati. They have 2.5 stars and they only have 3 reviews because only 3 people care enough to tell you about Cincinnati. And one of them is this woman, Paige M, who, if you read any reviews about Cincinnati, loves it. But she's the only one who cares, and I hate her. One of her fun facts about Cincinnati, literally she says, some fun facts about Cincinnati is that it's the 6th most expensive city for commuting in the United States. And that's because they never finished their subway system. So they kind of fucked up really way before we had those really cool omnibuses. They had a canal from the Miami-Erie Canal. So the canals used to be named by like the other bodies of water that they connected to, so nothing to do with the Erie Canal in New York. It was built in 1835 to 1845, and by 1856 it was completely unprofitable. So that was fast. They called it a dead old ditch in the newspaper in 1884, and there was a big flood in 1913, which the canal that they already hated and was unprofitable flooded the city. So they were like, they just ran, they're done. But then they're like, what are we gonna do with that big hole in the middle of the city? And they're like, oh, well, other cool cities have really great subway systems. And at the time, Cincinnati was I think it was the 9th most populous city in the United States. You can quote me on that, because I'm like 99% sure it's true. And it was like above Cleveland, they were doing really well, people loved Cincinnati. And in the next couple of decades, they completely fall off the map because they voted in favor for the subway in 1917. This is the canal, it becomes the first subway. Does anybody know what else happened in 1917? World War I. It's not that they didn't try, it was just really bad timing. It's like the worst relationship ever. They get all the funding, they get these bonds passed, and then the timing's really bad. They cannot do anything with the bonds because the federal government is issuing bonds. So they can't start the construction, they don't have the materials, everything's going to war. So the war ends, and they start building in 1920. And this is what came out of what they built in the subway. They have about 7 miles of tunnels, they've got 7 stations, and in 1928 they open a big road. And they have a whole week of parades and celebrations, and everybody gets a half day. And the greatest part about this book says, the subway project has been on hold ever since they opened the road. Because does anyone know what happens in 1929? Yeah. So they had gone through all this inflation after World War I, and they finally started getting everything together to get all these bonds, and we're gonna get the rest of the money to build the subway. But no, they can't because they have to spend their money on other public works because subways were not in favor already at the time. And Cincinnati had a bus system, they had a streetcar system, so people were like, well, we'll just wait, we'll get that later. And they get the Engineers Club of Cincinnati in 1936 to build a new map because traffic patterns have completely changed. And I tried so hard to find a picture of them because I bet they were total babes. And I'm so sorry. But there's no pictures of them because they didn't finish their survey until 1939. Does anyone know what happened? World War II! Literally the worst relationship Cincinnati's ever had. So even these are actually streetcar tickets where they're advertising that you should buy war bonds because like the streetcar doesn't want the money to go on the subway, and yeah, the subway doesn't even happen.